in this presentation, I've tried my best to stay kind of in the middle where it doesn't get too technical, but it also isn't just fluff and I waste your time. So we definitely want to have you leave with lots of practical tips about gut health. And this is an interesting thing that I'm very passionate about because I've had a very interesting, non-linear, non-expected career in the sense that I've been able to work with a lot of people in the performance space and I've worked with many professional athletes. But on the flip side, I've worked with people who are really unwell, and I'll share a bit of my story in a little bit as well. And it's something that it's so closely tied to their identity, who they are, how they feel. And one of the things that I want everybody to understand today is that you need to know the basics about gut health no matter who you are. Whether you don't work with a single person, for your family members, you need to know this. Whether you're a coach and you work with performance athletes, you need to be questioning this stuff as well. And I'll really make a case for it and hopefully a compelling case for it. So, what I'll actually start with here is why are we talking about gut health today? So, one of the things that we have to honor is where social media trends go and what people are searching for on Google Trends. And this is a cool research firm. It's a really good resource to look up as well. It's called Pulsar, and they really do analysis on social media and Google Trends and things like that. And this is actually an older image. They haven't done an updated one. I've been waiting for it. But you could see that this graph or chart goes from 2014 all the way to 2020. And you could see in terms of the bars and the blue line, the bars are social volume mentions. So that's social media. And the blue line is Google Trends. So that's how many people are searching for this stuff on Google. And you could see the slope of this line just increases, 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 right? And it ends in 2020. And you could see how steep that increase is. And it's interesting because around 2014, I was a freshman in this world. And a lot of people didn't know the basics. They didn't know what a probiotic was. They didn't know what a digestive enzyme was. They didn't know about what the gut is. Like even that term, you ask a kid to point to their gut, they're going to kind of just point around their belly button, right? They don't actually know what's in there. So this ended in 2020. Now, what happened in 2020? The pandemic. And I think this post-pandemic world, we have to honor. We don't have to get into the micro details of what we're blaming, but people were isolated. They weren't going to the gym anymore. Gyms were closed down. They weren't interacting with other people anymore. Lots of people's metabolic health went straight in the gutter because all of a sudden they're way more sedentary. So I would assume that the slope of this line is continuing to increase. So if there's one thing you want to do to set yourself apart from, I hate to use the word competitor. I don't believe in competition, but anyone who is doing something similar to you and you want to set yourself apart, have a gut edge to what you want to work on. Have a gut edge to how you present information, what you question. And I guarantee you, your outcomes will increase as well once you get a baseline understanding of this. So if we take a look at why gut health, well, there's environmental toxins, chronic stress, nutrient poor diets, and these are disrupting our gut health at a macro scale all across the globe. And this is where I won't put a tinfoil hat on. I won't get into conspiracy theories or anything like that. You could blame pesticides, you could blame the food supply, but the one thing that's definitive is that the rates of people complaining about digestive issues are astronomical compared to where they were. Even in my career, I've had the privilege of working with the athletes, but I've also been in very tough situations with people with very complex disease processes going on. And I used to work with a lot of people with IBD, inflammatory bowel disease. And the one thing that I personally noticed, and I think it's something everyone agrees on, especially if you talk to a gastroenterologist or a professional that's just seeing these types of people all day long, the age at which these things are being diagnosed is much younger. And secondly, the frequency is way up as well. So I used to, or in the early days, encounter people that were diagnosed with IBD maybe in their mid to late 30s, maybe in their early 40s. And sadly, over the last 4 or 5 years, there's been 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds. So this is something that the whole world is kind of shifting in the wrong direction. And you have a lot of power on the preventative side. So that's what I really want to showcase. And for athletes, a lot of what we work with, and if you're using spoken products already, a lot of what the products are tailored toward are going to be professional athletes. So when they have a compromised gut, they're going to encounter more plateaus, slower progress, poor recovery, and ultimately frustration, despite having like the perfect regimen. You could give them the perfect prescription, the perfect volume every single week, but they're going to struggle. And just like resistance training is important to build muscle, so is optimizing for gut health. And this is where we want to make sure people are absorbing their nutrients well. They're not inflamed. We're going to dive deep on the inflammation side, and we're going to talk about something called the gut-brain axis, which is super important for you to recognize. But the good news is, as I showed you with the social trends, more and more people, more than ever before, are kind of gut proficient now, and they're looking for people that know about gut health. And this is kind of like a pro and con thing because they could, on the con side, be conned. They could be taken advantage of. There's a lot of crap products that are out on the market as well, but there's a lot of good that can happen from this as well. So I just want you guys to reach for the keyboards. I know there's a few of you on camera. I'd love to know in your practices, regardless of what you're practicing, are you currently addressing gut health? Are you talking to your clients about gut health? And if you're not a practitioner, if you're somebody who simply loves the products, are you somebody who knows about gut health? So give me a yes and no. I'd love to see kind of where the numbers skew as well and how many people actually know about this. I know when I used to ask people back in 2014 when I would do live events, it would be barely any hands going up, and now the majority of the room usually does as well. So I'd love to know, just are you addressing gut health? Are you doing anything specific whatsoever? And we'll see. Might have a bit of a quiet room today, it seems like. So we're getting sort of mainly working with food intolerances and inflammation. So actually that's not a sort of. You're working on the gut. So that's quite profound. And one of the things I'm sure if you see a lot of people with food intolerances, you're probably seeing a lot more people with food intolerances and they're kind of allergic to everything. Or no, I shouldn't say allergic, sensitive to everything as well. Harold says on a personal level, yes. Moretta says, yes, I'm a gut health hormone focused dietitian. Amazing, amazing. That makes me really happy to hear. There's not enough of us on this side. So you guys can see that this is something that many more people are gravitating toward. And there's always a place for you to start. You don't have to be so technically proficient. You don't have to go to PubMed and read 5,000 papers on gut health. You need to know the basics. And one of the things I'll show you today is that a lot of the ways to improve gut health are completely free, but people ignore them because they're not sexy, they're not fun, they're not things that you actually focus on. Jake says on a case-by-case basis related to inflammation and skin issues. Absolutely. So that's something we're seeing progressively worse in people as well. And that rabbit hole goes quite deep. So thank you guys for sharing. I'd love to just give you some background. I was joking with Rachel and Leah and the team that I'm probably the one presenter that's going to have the least amount of muscle on here. So I'll show you where I'm coming from, though. So this was me in 2007. And at this time, I was about 128 pounds. And in this picture here, I'm actually wearing a suit I was custom fitted for my cousin's wedding 3 months prior. So you can see I'm swimming in the shirt. And this is where I lost a lot of weight in a short period of time. So my background for 14 years, I used to suffer from chronic digestive issues and room clearing anxiety. I could not give a presentation like this. I would never be able to get on a stage. And fast forward today, I've spoken to stages in front of 800 to 1,000 people. So I can't believe it when I think about it in hindsight either. But this was a really rough time for me. So at this time, I had no confidence. I had fear of failure. And I've been a hockey player my whole life. So I played AAA growing up, AA growing up. So that was my passion. And I knew that anytime I got in the gym, the results just wouldn't come, right? So I believed the world was a tough place. Life kind of had it out for me. And I didn't think I'd ever be able to get married, have a kid, and all of those things are true today. But at the time, my health was my priority. You guys have probably heard the famous quote that you might have 100 problems until you have a health problem, and then you only have one problem, right? So this was kind of my life story. And I knew that I not only wanted to get out of this shell that I was in, but I wanted to help others avoid the same path as well. So my kind of introduction to gut health is through my own personal health journey. And this is something that I went to 10 different practitioners. I flew to parts of the US to try to find answers, couldn't find answers. And until I met somebody that was a gut health expert, some of you might know him, his name's Sachin Patel. And he actually was the first person to investigate my gut, actually take a look at what the train looks like, actually test me. And After finding out what was wrong with me, within 3 months, I had no anxiety, I had no digestive issues anymore. And right away, I was a newly graduated chiropractor at the time. My heart was nowhere else. I'm like, I want to do this. And so I started working with people in a functional health capacity, and I've worked with lots and lots of people. If we fast forward to today, as I mentioned, I'm a father. I have a beautiful 5-year-old boy, and he's following in my footsteps. And we got him on the ice 3, 4 times a week, and he's in soccer and karate and swimming. And I'm making sure to give him like the upbringing that I never had. So he's a busy guy, and I have my beautiful wife, and I'm really living a life that's focused on my purpose and being a role model. And now I'm confident in my skills. I'm confident in my ability to help others and communicate this message as well. I have great energy, I have great digestion, I have great mental health. So I've delivered hundreds of talks. I've helped 2,500 plus people in all sorts of different ways. I've trained hundreds of practitioners in creating the most fulfilling programs for their practice. And I wake up excited every day. I was really excited to do this event when I was asked as well. And I feel I can help you guys in many ways, and I could share resources for you in many ways for you to become a better communicator and someone who also leads with purpose. So you can see that this always starts with where you are. And one of the things that I really want everybody to kind of use as a framework right off the bat is when you get a client come into your office, ask them where they are, or you personally assess where they are. And although this isn't a picture perfect 50-50, it's not like a black and white thing. What happened to me is because I grew up playing hockey and I continued to play competitive hockey, and then I got into ball hockey, and then that got pretty competitive, is I would always be looking for a performance edge. But the problem was my health was in crisis. So I was in a state where I needed kind of a whole different approach, right? It's kind of like I was looking for that hammer, but I wasn't ready for that hammer yet. I needed kind of the foundational work first, right? So this is where if you have a client like me come to you, the quote unquote hard gainer, we kind of write them off like that. The approach sometimes in the nutrition world and the fitness world is to try to up their calories, try to up their protein, get them on some mass gainer smoothies. I used to visit my local GNC, buy all sorts of crap that I probably took 2 scoops out of, and my stomach got upset and I never used again. So I desperately was trying to gain weight for so long. And just to let you know, I'm like 175 today. So like complete transformation. But these mass gainer smoothies, if they're not absorbing it, these things are quite hard on the gut. They usually don't have the best ingredients. You're actually trying to use this hammer, get people to perform better, but they actually need help much lower. So I was in crisis at that time. So this is where there's a lot of things you can do with this person prior to you ramping up the nutrition, trying up their calories, trying up their protein, and even trying up their workouts. I remember when I used to work out, it would take me a week to recover from a single moderate intensity workout. I remember after hockey games, I would sit there and ice both my knees for hours and hours and hours. And none of that happens today because a lot of that was coming from my gut. But you really want to look at people and be like, okay, is this somebody who needs performance, or are they more in crisis, or where are they on this sliding scale overall? Now, this is one of the most important frameworks I'm going to share with you today. So in the same way that you look at people, are they in crisis? Are they in performance mode? I want you to look at their physiology. This is a bit of an oversimplification, but it's a great framework to start from, because what I've learned the hard way and with experience is that most people in front of you are only in one given mode at a certain time. So when we speak about physiology, how their body operates overall, they could either be catabolic or anabolic. So I like to think of this as like the temperature gauge in your car, where you could kind of be on either end, and both extremes are really bad, right? Like we're going through a winter right here north of the border, and if your car is ice cold and you start to floor it, bad things can happen. But you also don't want the opposite, where the car's overheating and all of a sudden you have to stop and you can't use it anymore. So think about it the same way. So if we kind of break these terms down a little bit, we could start with catabolic. Catabolic means to break down. So I gave the example of a car. A car is catabolic with gas, right? It burns fuel to make energy to get the car to go. Well, catabolic, when we're breaking down, we're constantly breaking down parts of our body as well. So people who are more toward the catabolic side, their body's chronically breaking down. There's minimal repair going on. They have an inability to heal. They might be tired all the time. They might be fatigued all the time. They might not have a lot of muscle. So when I was 128 pounds, I still remember one of my cousins, he's kind of a jerk to me, especially in those days. And he told me, he's like, you look like a hanger wearing a t-shirt, right? So I had no muscle. I was like skin and bones at that point. And it's because I was was so catabolic that I needed to slowly nudge that over to the anabolic side. And the difference with anabolic means to build. So I know that word, the worst example I could give you are anabolic steroids. So I'm sure nobody here has experimented with those, but why do people take anabolic steroids? To build things that are beyond physiological limits, and that allows you to repair faster, generate more muscle, have more energy overall. That's why there's different types, and some people get performance benefits. I should say almost all people get performance benefits, but the body's healing is prioritized, right? So we want this balance between catabolic and anabolic. And this is where when people go to the gym, technically they're catabolic, right? You do a workout, you're breaking down muscle tissue, you are catabolic during that time, but you rely on that period of anabolic activity afterwards to build you up. So this is where when you're looking at somebody, some people are actually way more prone to being catabolic. And this is where all the other stuff matters. You could dial their nutrition into a T, you can dial their workout frequency, their performance frequency into a T. But if they have poor sleep, if they have lack of healthy movement, if they have high stress, and stress is sort of that easy scapegoat we can blame, but it's totally true. If they're in a traumatic situation, if their job sucks and they're just burning the midnight oil every single day, those factors are going to make them perform less and make them more catabolic. And even things like hidden infections and toxins. So I won't dive too deep into that side of the gut, but people are carrying around all sorts of weird stuff with them from vacations and pets and just eating out at restaurants and having raw fish with sushi. And like I can name dozens of factors, but you pick up this stuff. And then once this stuff is inside of you, even if you're on a sunny beach with your feet in the sand, your body has kind of a higher baseline level of stress because you're carrying these things around. So at the time, I was hardcore catabolic. And it wasn't just like a conceptualization of catabolic. When I would do my lab work after a workout, my creatine kinase levels, CK levels, which is a sign of muscle breakdown, they always go up after a workout. But mine were like 5 times higher than even somebody who works out. So I literally had objective data showing me I don't recover from my workouts at all. And I later found out I had issues with my stomach and I had something called H. pylori, which prevents me from breaking down protein. And I had this whole issue going on. But this is where if you can give people this framework, now they can start to take action steps to get over this framework. So they can start to make sure that they're getting proper sleep. They can work on their movement. They can work on their nervous system. They can work on the way they tolerate stress. For some people to actually get better, sometimes they need to switch jobs. Sometimes they need to switch careers. Sometimes they need to get out of rough relationships. Things like that must happen. But when you have this framework, you can really assess where they are. So if you have somebody who just keeps losing muscle mass and they're losing weight, they're catabolic. And unfortunately, the world we live in today, and we have a big role to play to kind of convince people not to go that way. But with a lot of these injectable medications that are going out, I know you know the one I'm talking about, people are losing muscle mass, right? So although the number on the scale is going down, they're becoming very catabolic. And the other big thing, and I'll share it with you when we talk about the gut here, what actually is the gut? Your gut actually has muscle. So one of the things I was actually going to name this presentation was gut gains, right? Because that's what we're all looking for, that the gains must start from the gut. Well, when we think about the gut, like I mentioned, if you ask a kid to point at their gut, they're going to point kind of around their stomach, and that's kind of the gut to them. And even as a kid, like you can't discern between small intestine, large intestine, all of that. But if a really easy exercise for everybody listening right now is if you were to put your hands on your cheeks and follow them into your mouth. You don't have to put your hands in your mouth, but follow them into your mouth. Your cheeks literally turn into the inside of your mouth. So you don't realize this. They turn into the inside of your mouth, then it turns into your throat, then it turns into your esophagus, which is this long pipe in the picture at the top of it. And the first spot is your stomach. And that's where the majority of protein digestion happens. That's where the majority of digestion, I would say, happens. You have hydrochloric acid in there, which has a pH of 1 or should. So it's very acidic. If you somehow got your finger in there, which is near impossible, it would chew the skin, the nail, the bone right off, right? So that's the stomach. That's where food drops. But then the stomach on the exit has about 20 plus feet of small intestine and then a few feet of large intestine at the end. And then we have an opening on our back end. And guess what we have back there? We have skin again, right? So we have cheeks up here. We have cheeks back there. So you could think of your digestive tract as just one tube that runs right through you. And technically it's outside of you, but it has a barrier that prevents stuff from getting into the interior of the body, into the bloodstream as well. You have something called the gut lining that prevents that. And I'll show you a microscopic rendering of that as well. But this is what the gut is. The gut actually starts in the mouth and it goes all the way to your back end. And each of these things is vitally important to happen at a certain time. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we're talking catabolic physiology and anabolic physiology. You have something called smooth muscle. in your intestines. It's in your gut wall. And that's actually what moves stool along and does this fancy thing called peristalsis. That's actually how we have bowel movements, how we digest our food, how stuff keeps moving through our system. That depends on this smooth muscle that's in your gut. Smooth muscle is a fancy way of saying involuntary muscle. So, as an example, your heart is full of smooth muscle. That's why right here on this call, none of us are sitting here going beat, 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 and trying to control our heart. It's because it's smooth muscle. It's involuntary. It's not going to become a bodybuilder heart, right? It's not going to get bigger. Smooth muscle doesn't really hypertrophy like that, but it has a vital role because it's kind of working all of the time. Well, the first place you lose muscle from when you become catabolic is actually your gut. It's not your skeleton, it's your gut. So this is why some people post stress or after maybe weight loss, some of you, unfortunately, I hope none of you have had this happen, but I've heard from a lot of people, they go to Mexico, they pick up a parasite, all of a sudden digestion's not right for a couple months and they drop 20 pounds. Now they're sensitive to everything. Well, the difference between somebody who could eat pizza and pasta all day long and never pay for it and somebody who has to watch every little thing they eat, this gut wall was compromised in some way. Yes, there's other variables, but this gut lining, this muscle was it was compromised in some way. It became catabolic in some way. So we have to remember the gut in this context. So another great analogy is that digestion is like a car wash. So for you to be more proficient to talk to your clients, this is an amazing analogy because a car wash steps have to happen in a certain order, right? You go in, you might get the pre-rinse, then they put the soap on, then they wash you, then they dry the car, and then you drive off if we just simplify it, right? You wouldn't necessarily drive in and the first thing they do is do the final rinse on you, then give you the soap, then try to dry the soap, and then you ride off. If things happen out of order, the end product is messed up. In this case, the end product is our bowel movement, right? So that can get disturbed. So each section, right from the mouth is teeth. There's no other part of your digestive tract, I hope, that has teeth, right? So this chewing, and a lot of people I talk to, especially in the athletic world, they're just too busy that they have this kind of like go, go, go attitude as they inhale their food whole. Like you want to get calories in and they know they don't have 2 hours to sit there and eat this 3,000 calorie meal. They're going to just inhale it. And sometimes they might put it in a smoothie and just chug it down. Your digestive system has no idea what's coming in if you don't chew your food. So studies have actually shown, it does vary a little bit, but the optimal chew per bite is somewhere between 25 and 40 chews. And these studies have looked at things like digestive secretions. They've also looked at things like satiety, so how full you feel after a meal. And people who chew slower actually have better body composition. They're less likely to become obese because their ghrelin, leptin, a lot of these hunger regulation hormones we have, they work optimally. So chewing is this vital, vital, vital process. So make sure your clients are chewing. That's so important. Then we have our stomach, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail, but that has hydrochloric acid. It's very acidic. We want to make sure that that is optimized. And there's lots of things that cause low stomach acid, which I'll get into. And then that signals your pancreas to make some juice, your gallbladder to release some bile to help you digest fat and other carbs and other proteins. And then finally, we have absorption in the small intestine, and the large intestine is more of a packager, right? So this digestion is like a car wash. It relies on the step before it and steps happening in order. And if any of these steps don't happen correctly, the whole system collapses. It's not just a localized issue. So that's one thing that happens in the medical system a lot, is it gets treated like a localized issue, but there's a domino effect everywhere. Then, as I mentioned, your gut, it's a tube that runs through you, but it's lined by this gut wall, this very thin layer of a single cell. So your gut wall is one cell thick. As crazy as that sounds, it's thinner than a razor blade. And what they've done here is they've actually made these things look bigger for the illustration. But as I mentioned, these cells, they are thinner than a razor blade and they bind together with proteins. So if somebody, again, has poor protein digestion, things like that, they can end up with something called a leaky gut, where things that were supposed to stay in the gut now start making into bloodstream. So for those of you that had mentioned that you work with food sensitivities, this is one of the primary culprits behind food sensitivities, is stuff getting into the blood. And then what does your blood do? It does what blood is supposed to do. Your immune system will attack foreign things. Food proteins, whole food proteins, are not necessarily supposed to be be in your bloodstream. They're supposed to be broken down in the gut, and then the smaller components enter the bloodstream, like micronutrients. So you could have it that way, but also bad bugs that you pick up can break down your gut barrier as well. And as I mentioned, this is also where you have smooth muscle. So you can literally lose muscle mass in the gut, which in my opinion is way worse than losing skeletal muscle mass because it's quite difficult to get back. It's a long journey back. But I remember when I was at my low, I could only handle about 5 foods. That was like my max. I was eating meat, I was eating avocados, sweet potatoes, and carrots. Like those are the only things I could really handle at the time. So it was a really boring diet, but that kept me somewhat symptom managed at the time. But as I worked on my gut, as I started to improve these variables, fast forward today, and I don't eat it frequently, but I can tolerate gluten. I could eat dairy. I could pretty much eat whatever I want today, right? But this came over time by getting these quote unquote gut gains. And that's what allowed me to also gain skeletal weight and skeletal muscle overall. So we have to be talking about these things. You have to be proficient in these things. Another funny one, and I won't have you say yes or no, but do you guys ever wear your gas as a badge of honor? So I know in a lot of fitness circles, and my brother's a personal trainer, so I'm allowed to make these jokes. He's a full-time personal trainer. He's 4 years younger than me, but he's got like 30 pounds of muscle on me, and he's just like a freak athlete. So the joke in the family is that I read all his books and he ate all my food growing up. But this intestinal gas, we kind of just wear it as a badge of honor, right? Like what's the stereotype with bodybuilders? They have room clearing gas. You better get out of here if they release some, right? But that's actually a big problem. You're never actually supposed to have smelly gas. So that's a hill I will die on. You're never supposed to have smelly gas. All of us right now on this call are passing gas, whether we feel it, smell it, hear it. We're passing it all day long. We pass numerous liters every single day. And that's a healthy thing. That's actually how your gut feeds itself, how the microbiome gets fed, all your bacteria and things get fed. But if your gas is smelly, this is one of my favorite words. What that is a sign of often is protein is putrefying. So putrefaction, it is just sitting there rotting, essentially. It's almost like a brick landed in your stomach, and now your stomach's like, what do I even do with this? And that's why if you ask people that have low stomach acid or stomach issues with protein absorption, or somebody told them that, hey, you need to double the amount of protein you eat, and they start drinking all these protein shakes, is they'll often notice that hours after they consume it, they have smelly burps, or hours after they consume it, they have smelly gas. And that rancid smell you smell is actually protein rotting away. So that's actually a sign that you either need to work on someone's stomach acid or you need to bring the amount of protein they eat down, let them acclimate to that protein, and then slowly increase it over time. So this is also another important concept is if you think about ancestrally, if you lived in a high protein environment where animals were readily available everywhere, your diet probably would have more of those in there, right? Just by process of what's available to you. But if you lived somewhere where animals were pretty scarce and maybe you ate off the land and maybe you were eating more vegetables and tubers and fruits and nuts and things like that, your stomach and your body is the ultimate energy conservation machine. It doesn't want to waste any excess energy. So you actually become used to low protein. So this is what happens with a lot of people who go plant-based, who go vegan, is they spend some time there if they're coming from there, and then they try to have meat, and then they have this big reaction to it. And oftentimes it's because their body had no idea that this was even available in their environment. So you do have to acclimate to these levels of protein. Yes, there's studies showing there's really no upper limit of protein you can consume in a meal, but where it actually comes in is in symptoms and how comfortable you are eating that protein. So if your clients are having intestinal gas with some of your recommendations, just play the patient road, bring that protein down, get them used to it, and I'll also give you a few other tidbits as well. The other thing I'll ask, and you could type it in the chat as I'm speaking here, is are you actually asking your clients about what their poop looks like? Or are you even checking your own? This is one of those like free tests we have every single day. I know it's not fun. There's like a cultural stigma over it, right? Like you wash your hands, you don't actually have to get your hands dirty or anything, but visually, if you were just inspect your stool, this is called the Bristol stool chart. You could find plenty of them. You could print one out, keep one in your office. But if you asked every single client, where do you fall on this scale? They should fall in this type 4 bowel movement, which is more of a sausage type bowel movement. And then if they vary from that, it tells you a lot. So if we go north on this toward the type 1, those people are probably dehydrated. They probably need some electrolytes. They probably need to drink more water a lot of the times and eat more fruit, things that are water-based as well. And then could be other factors dehydrating them as well. You want to question their water supply, what type of water they're drinking. And then as you get down toward the bottom, the lighter your stool becomes, the more it floats. Often that's a sign of fat malabsorption. So that's a sign that you're not digesting fat well. If you think about it, if somebody has floating stools, very important to ask, that's a sign that there's still undigested oil you can think of or fat in their stool. Because if you were to add oil to a glass of water right now, what would that oil do? It would rise to the top, right? So this is the same concept here. So if you simply just start asking your clients about what their stool looks like, it would be so helpful because you're going to be surprised by how many people tell you they are not a type 4. It's actually like one of those things you would they aspire to have, but they don't have it. And I know I see a skewed population base, and these people usually have digestive issues. So I almost never get somebody with type 4. But if you're getting people with that think they have healthy digestion, question this to see if this is actually true. And you can really change a lot of things that way. So the first lesson I'll teach everybody about, I know I touched on it, is low stomach acid. As I mentioned, the stomach is one of the first places after you're done chewing. It's one of the first places food falls. And the technical term is hypochlorhydria, but it's a fancy way of saying somebody has low stomach acid. And this could be for numerous reasons as well. It could be impacted by stress. It could be impacted by gut infections, nutrient deficiencies, aging. As we age with each decade of life, every 5 to 7 years of life, we don't make as much stomach acid anymore. That's why it was a lot easier, amongst other factors like testosterone, to have gains earlier in your life than it is later in your life. But the other big thing is a lot of people today are on proton pump inhibitor medications. So they're on like your Dexalence, your Tecdus, things like that. Those medications are meant to suppress stomach acid because they were having acid reflux. They were having acid come up. But what happens is that actually crushes the rest of the digestive system. It throws off the rest of the car wash. So if you read the pamphlets on a lot of these medications, they say to use them for a short period of time. If somebody has an ulcer, they absolutely need to take that medication to heal it. It's very difficult. Like, yes, some people have done it naturally, but very difficult to do it. You want to suppress stomach acid, but if you stay suppressed, you've actually lost this first place that breaks down most of your food for you, is the primary driver of protein digestion. And the other thing stomach acid actually does is it sanitizes and sterilizes your food. So this might be you, it might be somebody you know, but we've heard about these people who go backpacking in Thailand or Vietnam or India. They eat from street vendors and they never get sick. They just have these iron guts. And I would argue that a lot of times it's because they make really good stomach acid. Not much would survive really good stomach acid. So this is very important to know. So it's the first domino to fall. And it also signals other organs like your pancreas and your gallbladder to release more enzymes. So like a car wash, that soap is only going to be dispensed if the car wash signals that the pre-wash is done, right? So it's the same concept here. So most of you will probably need to or benefit from addressing stomach acid initially. Some low-hanging fruit are things like apple cider vinegar and lemon. Like, this stuff is all over social media, and it technically has some truth to it. People who use it, I've seen it clinically all the time. They do report less gas. They do report better protein digestion, not feeling so full after having a protein-rich meal. But beyond that, one of the things that helps us secrete more enzymes are bitter things in our environment. So there's actually a class of supplements called digestive bitters that you could pick up at any health food store. And it's basically some herbs that have a very bitter quality to it. And this works great with kids as well. They make kids versions. But this stimulates the digestive system to secrete these enzymes in preparation of food coming in. Then we have one of my favorite supplements, and that's betaine HCl. And nudge, nudge, I've been talking to some of the Spoken team, and I hope this is something on their radar in the near future, but that's something you could find at any health food store as well. And it helps to acidify the stomach. It helps to break down the actual bonds in the protein. So a protein is just a string of amino acids with bonds in between. So this actually helps break it down. And sometimes they come with pepsin in it as well, which also helps cleave that bond as well. And then there's other enzymes like proteases and like lipase helps you break down fat. These are pancreatic enzymes. They're supposed to mimic pancreatic enzymes. So this is where if people are reporting gas to you, maldigestion to you, adding in some of this low-level enzyme support could be really, really helpful for them. And it can really help them in the short term. Long term, you still want to figure out why their enzymes are low. Are they super stressed out? What's going on? But short term, that can be huge. So when I started to up my protein, this was a staple for me. And it really allowed me to go from like 130 to 140 to 150 and climb up slowly over time. So don't downplay enzymes. Assess hypochlorhydria in every person you work with. This slide, I might lose some of you because I know kind of what all the rage is right now, and that's carnivore diets, right? And I'm not here to say anything bad necessarily about the carnivore diet. I'm here to say the kind of something on the other side. What studies have actually found is high protein, low carbohydrate diets, they become increasingly popular, but they are at the expense of fiber. And this is really where there's kind of a new argument going on online. I feel like every 2 to 3 years there's something new we're arguing about. Like I remember when I first started practicing, the paleo diet was considered like God's word and everybody was dogmatically following it. And then we've slowly grown from there. Before the paleo was the Mediterranean diet. And we're kind of always like bored, right? We always find new things to argue about. Well, I like to look at the research. And one thing we know is that the gut is so vitally important for you. And the thing that feeds the gut is fiber. So if you go on a high protein, low carb diet, you must include vegetables in that low carb portion. And luckily, most vegetables are pretty low calorie, but there must be vegetables because you need the fiber. Don't have the expense of the fiber. And that's kind of the problem with the carnivore diet right now is yes, it's helping people because it is the ultimate elimination diet. You've eliminated every protein that the immune system could potentially react to. But what happens over time, we don't have any longitudinal studies on what happens to the microbiome. But the short-term studies we do have all show that it's at the expense of the microbiome. So fiber actually acts as a prebiotic. It acts as fertilizer for the gut. So when you eat a carbohydrate, one portion of it is the fiber, if assuming it has fiber. So if you eat broccoli, there's a carb component to it and then a fiber component to it. The definition of fiber is something you can't digest. So technically speaking, your computer mouse, like my water bottle here, you can't digest these things. But because they're not a carb, they're not considered fiber. Same thing here. Fiber goes through your digestive tract undigested, and it's supposed to get to places like your large intestine, where most of your healthy bacteria are. And then those bacteria that live there, they ferment the fiber and they create food for themselves. So it's this beautiful process. The food is called short chain fatty acids. And that's actually what feeds the microbiome. So some of these short-term fatty acids are butyrate, acetate, propionate. This is actually food for your microbiome. So if you're not having any fiber in your diet because maybe it's high meat, or what we'll also see is the standard American diet is really low in fiber because it's all boxed and packaged crap at the end of the day. They are not getting enough fiber in their gut. So butyrate is one of the most important ones out of the bunch. It's the one that's been most studied. It's the preferred fuel source for colon cells. It strengthens the gut barrier. It reduces inflammation as well. So what low fiber intake does is it disrupts the gut microbiome, it weakens the gut lining as well, and then it will undermine athletic performance and recovery. People will generally stay more inflamed. People will generally have poor absorption going on, nutrient absorption. So yes, they'll be getting enough protein. They might even be seeing some changes, but I know a lot of the people that follow pure carnivore eventually added more food into their diet. And oftentimes they're adding in things that have fiber because they kind of hit a wall. They kind of started to get sick and unwell and didn't feel like they had any more testosterone. They had low libido all of a sudden. So pay attention to these trends. And that's why I don't typically jump on a trend. I also don't just completely badmouth a trend because I have found that diet has been helpful to people with autoimmune conditions and immune systems. But we have to recognize something we've known for a while, and that's that fiber is very, very important overall. So don't take my word for it. I'll share a few studies for you as well. Here's a cool study on the regulation of inflammation by short-chain fatty acids. So this food that's made by your gut. And you could see that several functions, especially immune functions, they are tied to short-chain fatty acids. So these short-chain fatty acids can actually regulate things like white blood cells, cytokines, which are inflammatory molecules we use to combat things, and that's actually what produces inflammation. Chemokines as well. So this is where they even show antimicrobial effect. So these things actually prevent some of the bad stuff from colonizing the gut and making us inflamed. So fiber is very important, assuming someone can handle it, assuming someone's not bloated all the time and they're not having issues with that. So some takeaway points from this study is short-chain fatty acids. They improve immune function. They activate these protein receptors and white blood cells and endothelial cells. This also then acts as critical inflammation management for athletes overall. And this modulation can help in controlling exercise-induced inflammation, which can help in recovery and performance. And then short-chain fatty acids also serve as the primary energy source for colonocytes, which are your colon cells, the cells lining the colon. So they support intestinal barrier integrity as well. So that leaky gut we talked about earlier, short-chain fatty acids can help with that. And the US is a little bit ahead of us in Canada here. They actually have a lot of butyrate-based supplements, but this is one of those situations where if you can handle fiber, fiber is your friend. It's not an enemy. So you need it for nutrient absorption, immune system, overall well-being, and optimal performance at the end of the day. This here is one of the coolest studies I've seen. It was out of Korea. And what they actually did is they took probiotics. So some of you, I was hoping to maybe see it. I know a lot of people, they simply recommend probiotics because they were told they're good for the gut. But the one thing I've learned about probiotics is the vast majority of them don't actually colonize the gut. They don't stay in the gut. So if you look at the research on a lot of probiotics, they pass right through you. They give you a transient benefit. And this is the crazy thing. Probiotics are kept in the refrigerator. Oftentimes they die out or they don't even survive your stomach acid, which is kind of like the depths of hell, really warm, acidic. So what ends up happening is you get dead probiotics, but even dead probiotics carry genetic information. So people will get a transient benefit from consuming the probiotic, but the day they stop, they go back to square one very, very quickly. So this study, what they did is they actually looked at an athlete population base and they looked at their gut microbiome and they looked at what happens to them when they take probiotics, when they're on a limited diet, like a high protein, restrictive, low carb diet. What happens when they're eating these foods as well? And what they found was really, really cool. So I know this is a long slide, but I'll try to summarize it here. So probiotics alone may not enhance gut health in bodybuilders. In a 60-day intervention, bodybuilders consuming a high protein, low carb diet showed no significant improvement in gut microbial diversity or short chain fatty acid production after probiotic supplementation. This suggests that probiotics alone may not be effective in altering the gut microbiome in athletes with extreme dietary regimens. So I know sometimes athletes have to prepare for shows, especially if it's a bodybuilding show or something like that. They have to get to like a godly level of low body fat as well. Those things should be short term, and that's not something that should be maintained over time. You need to work on the gut. So this is where vegetables are your friend, fiber is your friend. So high protein intake without adequate fiber may offset exercise benefits. So even just going to the gym, lifting weights, being exposed to different microbes that way, and even the adaptation response of you breaking down muscle and gaining muscle, you actually have a positive gut benefit from doing that. So people who go and work out, they generally have better gut diversity than people who are sedentary. And then that leads to all sorts of domino effects. Well, if you don't have adequate fiber intake, you actually might be offsetting your entire exercise benefits. So this is huge, like when you think about it, right? So those that were in the low fiber group, it negated the positive effects of exercise on the gut. So we're not saying they won't get muscle gains and things like that, specific to the gut. So this is really, really important. Bodybuilders with such dietary patterns had reduced abundance of beneficial bacteria compared to those with balanced diets. So then the take-home point, balanced protein and fiber correlate with healthier gut microbiota. Bodybuilders whose protein and dietary fiber intake met this Korean recommended dietary allowance, they had greater gut microbial diversity, higher levels of beneficial bacteria. And this underscores the importance of balanced macronutrient consumption for gut health. And then probiotic efficacy may depend on dietary context. So this is also where some people I've talked to, they'll take a probiotic and they'll be like, I felt no different whatsoever. And that's where you have to question, okay, what are you doing beyond that probiotic? Are you actually creating an environment for those probiotics to go in and do something, right? It's kind of like having really bad soil in your garden. You can't expect to, like, you could buy the most expensive seeds and the most organic seeds you can buy, but stuff's not going to grow if it's like that, right? So this is where nutritional adequacy should precede probiotic supplementation. You should work on somebody's macronutrients first, but also pay attention to things like fiber. It's so, so important for us overall. Another cool concept and a framework I want all of you to understand is that a lot of things in the body work in a supply and demand format. So here we could see there's an elephant up in the air, and technically an elephant's pretty heavy. So you could have some things that are pretty heavy stressing you out. But if you have something even small and microscopic, like a nutrient deficiency, like this little mouse is showing here, that's actually going to skew the scales and you're going to be quite imbalanced. So if somebody, for example, is working out, they have a very stressful job, they have a very stressful relationship, they just have tons of stress in their life, one of the things that's going to happen to them is their demand is going to go way up and it's going to eat through their supply. And what supply are we talking about? They're probably going to need more magnesium, kind of as an easy one to go to, right? Magnesium breaks down adrenaline. It breaks down your dopamine and your adrenalines, your stress chemicals. So if you don't have enough magnesium, you can't actually methylate these things. You can't actually break these things down. So if somebody's going through stress and if they're working out on top of it, a lot of people, when they start doing lots of working out, they get like foot cramps that wake them up, calf cramps. They're usually low in magnesium. So that's something where the supply has to increase. Maybe they need more B6. B6 is your most commonly depleted B vitamin when you're going through stress, along with B12 as well. And that's where they might need more B intake. So The micronutrients, and I'll show you guys toward the end about how I use the supplements. Those are very, very important for you to understand. So always look at the demand in your clients' lives. You could have a textbook case you feel very confident with, but if they have too much demand in their life, it's going to impact their supply and ultimately impact the result they get, regardless of what you're working on. I want to quickly touch on the nervous system as well, because earlier in the presentation, I mentioned something called the gut-brain axis. And basically, our brain and our gut, which is kind of like our second brain, they're connected. And it's kind of like a two-way highway. So if you're Canadian, we call it highway. If you're in the US, freeway. You have a north lane and a south lane usually, or east and west. What's going to happen is your brain sends signals to your gut, and your gut sends signals back to your brain. And overall, we have this thing called our autonomic nervous system, which is this automatic behind the scenes nervous system. So right now, if you're measuring my heart rate because I'm talking and presenting, it'll probably be higher than baseline usually. So my nervous system is high. So if I was to eat a 3,000 calorie meal right in front of you while speaking right now, I wouldn't expect that to digest very well, right? But then the other way is also true. If there's stuff going on in your gut, it's going to alter the brain. So there's actually some great papers on mental health stuff, especially things like depression. There's a great article on the pathophysiology of depression, and it actually shows one of the big reasons people have depression is neuroinflammation. And a big way they have neuroinflammation is they have things going on in their gut that are causing inflammatory processes to take place. And then we get this signal to our brain. So this nervous system, it has two branches. You have your sympathetic, which is a fancy way of saying fight or flight, stress mode. If a lion walked in right now to our respective rooms, we would all freak out. We would go sympathetic. Where we should be to have optimal gut function, digest our food is parasympathetic, rest and digest, calm, lower heart rate. And the way that our body's wired is blood shifts all over our body, right? So we have our heart in the center, and where we send blood flow is where we send function. So if you have blood flow that's kept in your trunk region, you're going to have better liver function. You're going to have better digestive function. You're going to have better sexual performance. You're going to have better things in this area. But if you're constantly stressed out, that blood gets redirected to your arms, legs, and the back of your brain, which is your primal brain, to fight the stress or run away from this stress, right? So when blood goes outward, it's very tough to get optimal function in our organs. So we can't expect like if you think your body is a supercar, let's say it's a Ferrari, you can't expect it to work well because there's no blood going to the parts it needs to go to. There's literally no engine oil going to parts it needs to go to, right? So this is why the nervous system is so important. And this is what I meant earlier by a lot of things to improve gut health are completely free. So making sure your clients aren't watching like a thrilling drama or Game of Thrones or the news or something like that. Or like in my case, I'm guilty of it because I'm a Maple Leafs fan. Don't throw anything at me. And I'll be watching the playoff games and they're right after dinner, right? So I'll be pretty invested in those games. Well, I'm going to be paying the dietary price that day, or the digestive price, I should say, right? So I'll be more sympathetic. So making sure your clients aren't doing that most of the time, making sure they're taking some deep belly breaths, making sure they're chewing 25 to 40 times for every bite, making sure they're setting aside time, maybe getting in a different environment. Don't eat at their work desk. A lot of us work from home or in our offices. Don't eat at your work desk. Try to change up the environment because your brain might attribute that to stress subconsciously. But a lot of the ways to regulate the nervous system are completely free. You don't have to spend lots of money on it. The main nerve that connects your brain to your digestive tract and back, it's the vagus nerve. So vagus in Latin means wanderer. So this is a nerve that wanders all throughout your body, and it actually hits most of your organs as well, most of your digestive organs. So a lot of people today, they have poor vagal tone. So like 128-pound Ricky had poor muscle tone, you could actually have poor nerve tone as well. Your nerves need to have more tone to them. So you actually need to work on them. So this is where things like meditation, humming practices, exercise, probiotics, interesting. There's just numerous. There's probably a list of 50 things you could do. These things slowly improve vagal tone over time. So if you can get your clients working on their vagus nerve while they're doing some sort of athletic performance with you, it's going to improve their recovery time. It's going to improve the way their nervous system works. It's going to improve their adaptation to stress, which is what sports and everything is. So this is very, very vital. And this is something that's coming to the forefront. There's devices that are almost to market and starting to be well studied that are electrical devices, and they actually stimulate parts of your neck. So you kind of wear them like headphones on your neck, and they'll stimulate your vagus nerve right where it exits the brainstem at the medulla oblongata, so your midbrain. And that's coming along, but there's so many things you could do before investing hundreds of dollars into these unproven devices at this given moment in time. So now we'll kind of switch gears toward the supplements here. And feel free to ask questions as we're going. And I just want to kind of show you my point of view. And I should say this to begin. You could ask anybody who's known me for a while. So I've been doing this for over a decade. I've been pitched supplements left, right, and center. So today's presentation with Spoken, like I truly believe in these products. And once I saw what's in them, I've tested these products as well. I've been a big, big fan, and not many things pass my critic meter. And I'm very, very tough on supplements. So I wanted to show you what is in these supplements and what can impact the gut and why it's vitally important you describe that to the people taking it. So they've actually shown in studies, if you know you're doing something that you think has the expectation of doing good for you, it will do more good for you. So they've actually shown that if you get people walking 10,000 steps a day, a lot of people will tell me, oh, I work at the airport or I work in a warehouse and I get 10,000 steps a day, but my weight's not budging, right? Those are stressful 10,000 steps. But if you know that you're doing them for exercise, so they've actually cued people and they just told you, okay, today at work, everywhere you walk, just think of it, it's for exercise. It's a good thing. People with the expectation of a good thing will get a different beneficial effect from that, right? So now that you'll know more about these products, I hope it helps you relay this to your clients as well. So first and foremost, I'll start with my favorite one, the one I've had the longest time testing. It's the Sleep Builder formula from Spoken. And the Sleep Builder, what I love about it is it's melatonin free. So there's no melatonin. That's not to say anything bad about melatonin, but I feel melatonin's a bit overdone. And there's a lot of new evidence coming out and a lot of people who are on this side of the hill where they actually feel melatonin supplementation can be dangerous long term. I've seen things preliminary. I have not gone down the rabbit hole, but things like it could actually thin out part of your cornea. It makes you way more sensitized to actually real light coming in a bad way, or I should say desensitized to light coming in as well. So you do have to be careful with long-term melatonin supplementation because that's just something so new to us, right? It's in some ways short-term harmless. Like people have taken hundreds of milligrams of it, and I've seen macrodose protocols as well. I've participated in macrodose protocols also, but I love that it doesn't have melatonin because you can really keep this in consistently over the long term. And it has magnesium right off the bat, 300 milligrams. And this magnesium is going to help you break down adrenaline. It's going to help relax muscle. Magnesium does 300 things in the body. So many of you know that already. It's probably one of the most common supplements sold in gyms and to nutrition clients as well. But beyond that, we have some juggernauts in here. We have L-glutamine, 5,000 milligrams of it. So first and foremost, one of my big beefs with supplements is I would be pitched a supplement and it would have 12 ingredients in one capsule. And I'd be thinking like, how much of each thing is actually in there? There's not enough real estate in there to actually hit a therapeutic dosage. So this is being sold as this amazing thing with all this research, but the research was at much higher dosages. So the fact that there's 5,000 milligrams of L-glutamine is one of the preferred fuel sources for your enterocytes. So that's your gut cells. And that allows you to rebuild your gut barrier, but it also is involved in muscle recovery as well. It's very, very closely involved in muscle recovery. So that's a big number. L-theanine is sort of the brakes on the brain. So it's this precursor to something called GABA, which is the brakes on the brain. And how you can tell somebody has a GABA issue sometimes, there's two ways. There's central nervous system GABA, which is somebody gabs a lot. This is the person you know that just doesn't shut up. It could be a client. They just like, you have 30 minutes with them, it's going to be 45. You just know that, right? You can't say bye to them on the phone. A lot of times they have a central nervous system GABA issue where they actually don't have enough brakes on the brain, so they can't quiet those thoughts coming in. So everything comes out 100 miles an hour. And then the other way you could tell is people have peripheral nervous system GABA issues where they can't sit still. They're constantly fidgeting, shaking. Their legs are shaking when they're waiting. It's just all day. So L-theanine calms the body down. It's the brakes. It's the parachute. Like we see these drag cars that throw a parachute out to stop. That's kind of what I think of L-theanine as. 400 milligrams is a big boy dose. That's not a small dose by any means. So I love that. Inositol, I could spend a whole afternoon talking about inositol. It helps everything from blood sugar regulation, magical for women with PCOS and hormone imbalance going on as well. And one of the most important things about inositol to calm the nervous system down is inositol actually helps you build more receptor sites for neurotransmitters. So this is where you could take things like L-theanine, and some people will tell you when they take any relaxing stuff, it does nothing to them. Well, they actually might have a receptor site issue, and the inositol helps with that. And then glycine is involved in everything from liver health to sleep to calming the body down and the nervous system down. And 3,000 milligrams is a big dose. And like at the price point you're paying for this supplement, I have not come across anything that competes, and it'll help you replace ultimately 5 or 6 bottles of other supplements. And it's delicious. Anybody who's tried it knows. So this is something that can work really, really well. I see some of the comments here. I add L-theanine to my coffee every morning. Absolutely, right? It's actually one of the reasons why I'm a coffeeaholic, but one of the things a lot of people will notice is if they switch to green tea temporarily, they actually feel a little bit better and calmer. And it's because green tea actually naturally has L-theanine in it. So it kind of has the caffeine to take you up and then the L-theanine to bring you down on a pillow, right? So you doing the L-theanine in your coffee is hopefully having that same effect for you overall. I'll just show you my results. This is just like I wouldn't say like super average day. I want to just be honest with everybody. Normally, my REM sleep is around an hour and 20 minutes, an hour and 25 minutes if I sleep about 8 hours, like in that neighborhood. But when I take Sleep Builder, my REM sleep, you could say I've never achieved more than 2 hours of sleep using anything else. That's just not me. And I'm kind of an anxious, wired person. If anybody knows genetics, I have something called a COMT mutation, which people like me are like highly wired for stress. Stress affects us greatly as well. I've never slept that much in a good way. And like the dreams are really, really deep as well. In the morning you wake up, you're pretty refreshed also. So I'm through experience also enjoying this supplement a lot. And if you can get people to sleep better, that's when the vast majority of the repair happens. And that's where their gut will work a lot better. One of the biggest issues for me, I remember when I had my digestive issues, is the days I didn't sleep well, my gut issues were exponentially worse the next day, right? So this is when repair happens. You want to do sleep optimization first. It's like one of the lowest hanging fruits that you can have, and get your people out for morning sunlight, get them out, balance their circadian rhythm. But this is a great support supplement for you overall. Then we have another great
Can I,
supplement.
can
Oh,
I
sure.
jump in?
Go
Sorry,
for
we've
it.
just got a question from Marcus that I wanted to make sure before we move on from Sleep Builder. He said, is Sleep Builder okay for kids or juniors? So is that something that you can speak to in terms of like age or what's appropriate to who's it for?
Great question. So generally, I don't really give kids too much sleep related stuff. So this is where some practitioners might differ. Dosage wise, I'm sure if you fractioned out that dosage to a certain amount, it technically could be safer. I know there was I know Melissa had mentioned a study to me not too long ago on kind of amounts that somebody can take as well. But generally, I wouldn't give it to somebody who's like a toddler. I wouldn't give it to my son as an example, not at the dosages that are in there. I usually go more solo ingredient with kids. And that's where like my son takes a magnesium every day. He's been on a L-theanine GABA type supplement as well. So I'll usually break it out. But if they're teenagers, I would assume it should be okay. But I'll let the Spoken team verify that. Awesome. So next up would be the aminos and the ATP supplement. So when I was deficient in protein, one of the things that I found was I couldn't eat enough to actually digest enough and notice weight gain, notice muscle gain. Amino acids were vital to me, and I've tried almost every amino acid formula on the market. It's something that I rave about as well. Part of what I do is I run a metabolic program called Thaali in the South Asian community, and South Asians are primarily vegetarian. So we can't tell them to eat meat. There's no argument. It's usually for cultural or religious reasons. So we have to make sure they're getting enough amino acids. Well, this is kind of like getting free steak digested and delivered to your body. And I love the formulation because it has, again, therapeutic dosages of things. So as an example, L-leucine, the first thing you see there, I know many of you already know this, but that's the most important amino acid when it comes to muscle creation and protein synthesis. So it has your branch chains in there, but it goes so much deeper than that. It's got decent quantities of everything down. Some of these support liver health, some of these support vasodilation and blood flow, like the arginine. L-tyrosine actually helps you build more dopamine, which is your motivational chemical, and then goes on to make adrenaline. So it makes you better able to adapt to stress. And then it's got the peak ATP formula, which is going to act as an energizer from a cellular perspective. People will notice better performance with this. And when the gut is compromised, one of my favorite things to do is have people supplement with amino acids because I know they're not doing it on their own yet. And giving them the advice to ramp up protein, double, triple the amount of protein they're already eating, it's usually not a good idea because they're going to pay for it digestively. So these amino acids are just wonderful to supplement with and something that affects the gut directly. Now, here's a big thing I want to share with you. So I've had the pleasure of working with a few NHL players as well. And one of my favorite tests of all time is something called an organic acids test. So I don't know if anybody here does any OAT testing. It's a urinary test. And the best way to think about this test is it's kind of like an emission test for the body. You get someone's morning urine in the sample, and they take the analysis detects how many of these organic acids, these natural acids we make every day, are in that urine sample. And depending on where they fall, it gives you insight into several processes in the body. So literally, like I created an entire practice from organic acid testing and really looking at that supply and demand I looked like earlier. This is an elite hockey player whose nutrition was dialed in. And for those of you that this might take you back to high school or undergrad or any certification program you've done, this here is the citric acid cycle. If you're in the US, if you're in Canada, we call it the Krebs cycle. It's literally the 8-step process listed in order for how our mitochondria, how the battery power plant of our cells actually makes energy, actually makes ATP. So these are the exact players. And each of these, to get to the next one, they rely on certain micronutrients most of the time. But what you'll see here is if this test showed me that these acids were high, that usually means this person has a micronutrient deficiency. They usually need minerals, they usually need B vitamins, they usually need those micronutrients. And one thing I see in a lot of these athletes that I work with is they were on so many supplements, and they were on supplements like that covered all of their micronutrient side. They're on mineral complexes, B complexes, multivitamins, mitochondrial based supplements. But the one thing here is this person is so deficient in protein despite eating enough protein. So there's definitely something gut based going on, but also there's a supply and demand issue. This is somebody in the NHL, which is no small league, right? They're pushing their body to to a place that we rarely ever get to consistently every single week. So their demand is through the roof. So even if they up their supply a little bit, that teeter-totter I showed you earlier would be completely imbalanced, right? So when we saw this, this told us why this person couldn't get out of this injury rut, just kept getting injured over and over and over again. This is why their recovery sucked. They felt really sore if there was a back-to-back game. And these are pro athletes. And the issue with them was when everything hugs the left side like this, that means somebody is amino acid deficient. So the example I always give here is this is sort of like a car assembly line. So if you think about the Ford plant or any of these car plants that rely on an assembly line, you kind of need two things for that car to be built. You need tools. So you need the screwdriver, you need the drill, the hammer, like all the little tools that are needed to actually put the car together, the torque wrench, all of that. Then you need building blocks. You need the metal for the frame, the metal for the doors, the glass for the windows, the plastic bits, the leather bits, the electronic bits. You need all of the building blocks. Well, what happens in the athlete circle I've noticed is micronutrients get this precedent. So you're giving somebody all the tools. You're giving them this big, nice, shiny tool shed, but you're giving them no building blocks to work from. So at the end of the day, ATP won't be made, energy won't be made. And if you can't make energy, you can't repair, you can't recover. Everything in your body is cells. And if cells can't make battery power, you're not going to recover. So this person was one of the most efficient people I've ever seen. And sure enough, when we corrected this, injury issues went away. Their body started to repair. An old lingering injury started to clear up as well. So this is where amino acid supplementation can change the game, especially if you have somebody with gut dysfunction going on, and maybe they're either working with you or working with somebody else to fix that over time. In the meantime, amino acids work great. So I still to date stick on amino acids, and I notice the difference. I usually don't take them with me if I'm traveling or something like that, but I'll notice the difference with those as well. Like I'll definitely notice less performance, less energy overall. So amino acids is something I'm really happy about. But if you do have the ability to test, if you're, I know I saw a dietitian earlier, if you're a practitioner, this is one test to try to learn. It's a really, really good Swiss Army knife of a test overall. Then we have the greens, and the greens are amazing gut support as well. So this is one of those that it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife as well, where you could just take it and there's so much in there that covers foundational bases. And this is where like I could take this so many different ways. Some of the micronutrients in here, they help you in so many ways. They help the body adapt to stress. But for somebody who wants to really cover their bases, almost like an insurance policy. It's a great thing to drink. And I've had these, I actually just drank them on the weekend for the first time, and they taste really good as well. They have great ingredients. Majority of it is organic as well. It has some inulin fiber in there for the microbiome also. But what I really like is that it has 500 milligrams of colostrum and it has 500 milligrams of glutamine, which we also talked about with the sleep builder. Well, what these things do at the end of the day is they really help gut integrity. So glutamine has well documented benefits for gut mucosal integrity, basically the mucosal lining of the gut. decreasing permeability, helping ulcers to heal as well, and leaky gut. In athletes and individuals with gut stress, so either the stress is from the actual exercise itself, it could be from heat stress. A lot of people who work out outside, whether they be marathon runners or sprinters or track athletes, any soccer players, they'll be exposed to heat stress as well. And then NSAIDs, which are painkillers, and unfortunately, that's a whole different conversation, but they're being abused way more than average in these professional leagues. You will cause more GI permeability, more leaky gut, which will lead to other domino effects. So you supplementing with glutamine is a great insurance policy. And then one of my favorite things is colostrum. Colostrum is what's found in mother's milk as well. It's found in breast milk, and it's where babies get the majority of their immune system from if they are breastfed as well. And that's actually shown in several studies if you use it before exercise to prevent that intense exercise leaky gut that a lot of people get afterwards. So it can really, really help your immune defenses. It can help in your recovery overall. And for anybody wondering, like these are the PubMed IDs. So if you saw these on any previous slides, if you just type that into PubMed, it'll link you directly to the study. Even if you Google it, it'll link you directly to the study as well. And then we have quercetin in there. Quercetin is really cool because it's an antioxidant, but it's been studied for things like ulcerative colitis, shown to reduce inflammation. So it has an anti-inflammatory, antioxidant-like effect in the body. The one thing I didn't put here is it really helps with histamine issues as well. So when people have leaky guts, they often have, they're way more prone for histamine type stuff. They get itchy skin, rashes. They might react to foods very poorly. And quercetin can really help with that, along with stinging nettle and a few other things. And then we have curcumin. And curcumin can downregulate NF-kappa beta and other inflammatory pathways in the gut. It thereby alleviates inflammation related to gut, and potentially it can really help with things like gastritis as well. And these are just 4 ingredients and things that I pulled, but this is a full-on formula, so it's a great daily maintenance formula. But now you have a reason to also present it to people. I find that with greens powders, there's so many on the market. There's a really famous one that every podcast talks about, and not to say it's a good or bad product, but people are taking these, they're looking for these, and if you can give them a formula that was really well thought out by people who know what they're doing, that's only going to increase outcomes. And if you let them know that it's also going to be doing these things, it's also something they now have skin in the game about. They now know that this is a good thing for me overall. So there's a question, is there a best time to take the aminos ATP? Depends on the situation. So I used to take it directly in the morning, just so you're benefiting from it. Your mitochondria gets the building blocks, they get to make energy. But if somebody's working out, I still play hockey. I'll take it before hockey games as well. I'll double up on those days. Or if I forgot earlier, I'll take it on those days for sure. So that keeps me compliant. So you can either have it in as a daily thing, or you can have it as a pre-performance thing as well.
Ricky, could I just jump in here since you mentioned first thing in the morning? We did have a question come in that was asking, is there a gut benefit to exercising first thing in the morning on an empty stomach versus strenuous exercise in the evening that's followed by a meal? I know timing sometimes makes a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. So this is a very tricky one because it depends on so many factors. Generally speaking, it depends on the person. I know some people who do amazing with fasted workouts. I am not one of those people. My brother could fast for 18 hours and absolutely like hit all his lifts and all his numbers. That's not me at all. So I take it back. I'll kind of explain it 2 ways. One is that catabolic anabolic physiology. Someone's more prone toward a catabolic side. They probably want to have something in the system, but evening workouts are really tough on the body as well because generally as the day goes on, your core temperature should decrease, and that's what allows you to fall asleep. And I play men's league at 9 p.m. sometimes, 10 p.m., and I do not sleep well. I got my Oura ring on. It screams at me in the mornings. So I would avoid evening workouts unless schedule doesn't permit any other way. But there's actually a concept called chronotyping. So this is if anybody wants to look into it, you can. Chrono means time, and typing means your type. So it's your genetic time type. And there's some overlap. It's not picture perfect, but basically we all have different sleep genes, or the length of our sleep gene. Some people can sleep 4 or 5 hours, and their body has recovered just like mine would after 8 hours, right? So that's where there's different chronotypes, and there's a great book on it called The Power of When, and that sort of tells you for your chronotype what would be the best time of day to work out with you. And clinically, I've been using chronotyping. I send everybody I ever work with a chronotyping video, and people who live in accordance with their chronotype typically notice the best performance and the best recovery. But it's not like God's word. You can skew it a little bit, but for me, like an evening workout is not a good idea whatsoever. Generally, my best performance is in between noon and 2 p.m. So I'm a bear chronotype, which is the majority of the population, but that's a great thing to look into. Yeah. And then a question on fasting. I fast 4 days a week and do not do it on the weekend. I do a 14 or 18-hour fast. So fasting is an interesting one as well because it entirely depends on your ability to recover from it. Fasting technically is stressful. We have to recognize that, but it can be a EU stress, which is a positive stressor on the body. It depends on how catabolic you are. What happens a lot of times, because I also work with a lot of people with metabolic issues, and one of the things in the South Asian population, I'll just kind of say it bluntly, is a lot of people are skinny fat, right? And that's like I've been in that state at one point in my life as well, where there's not a lot of muscle mass, but because their diet's so heavy in carbs, they end up putting on a lot of weight, especially around the midsection. So they're skinny fat. And these people, they might have read intermittent fasting is a good idea, or hey, you should do a fast a week. Sometimes they actually take a few steps back in their health by doing that because they're so catabolic and they don't have the reserves to actually recover from that fasting. So I find it's very contextual. And this is why I feel biofeedback is so important. So using an Aura Ring, no affiliation, a Whoop band, no affiliation, like some of these pieces of tech that let you know what your heart rate variability is doing and how it responds. Me personally, I know that if I fast, my heart rate variability, if I do an intermittent fast till noon and lunch is my first meal, if I don't do it every day, if I do it 4 days a week, my HRV stays pretty happy. But if I try to do it every day, and I just remember years ago when I discovered like the bulletproof diet and all that, I was doing it a lot longer. I didn't have an Oura Ring at that time, but I'm pretty sure I was taking many steps back in my health because my recovery was shot, my energy wasn't where it needs to be. So it's contextually different for everyone, and that's why self-experimentation is the only way you know. So I know not a super helpful answer, but that's the truth when it comes to fasting. But if a lot of your clients are like hitting the weights, doing cardio, like especially if you work with any hybrid athletes that are doing like CrossFit or High Rocks or one of those new things, if they're fasting and doing that, a lot of times that can backfire on them quite dramatically. And they would know that if they were looking at their HRV and tracking that. I would say that's I've said it on many podcasts and things like that. That's like my island variable. If there's only one thing you can measure in the body every single day, if you're stuck on an island, I would measure heart rate variability. Here's just a quick study here. There's tons of these studies as well. Bovine colostrum supplementation significantly reduced intestinal permeability in healthy athletes, especially if anybody's doing long distance running, marathon type events. I know what marathon runners are known for is not a lot of muscle, and they're usually extremely catabolic. Like I know I've seen horror videos of some of them having like just the runs while they're running and just not good outcomes, right? And oftentimes it's because their intestines are really permeable because they've just become so catabolic with their workload, how much they're putting their body through, and then they're probably not recovering nutritionally or their gut's not in the right spot to help them. So sometimes we get these really conflicted cases, and that's a case where supplements alone aren't going to solve the whole issue. You got to take the whole picture into account. This supplement here is like kind of one of a kind, I feel. I don't know. You guys can say yes or no in the chat here. If you're using PRMs, pro-resolving mediators, sometimes they're called SPM, specialized pro-resolving mediators. Are you using these in your practice at all? I'm sure many of you for years and years and years have been told fish oil is great for athletes, omega-3s are great for athletes, and technically that's true. But what pro-resolving mediators do is they take it a step further and they actually work on resolving the inflammatory cycle. So actually bringing resolution to an inflammatory event. And that's really, really key. So these things are derived from omega-3s. They're like enzymatically derived from omega-3s, and they really drive the resolution of inflammation. So why is that so important? The body needs as much work done for it as possible when your clients are in crisis. So there's been a lot of studies on these PRMs when it comes to Crohn's, colitis, cases where things are extremely catabolic, and it's shown very favorable results. So when you start taking PRMs, you should notice better recovery because you're getting it at the source. And I haven't come across anything at this dosage. I haven't come across anything with this transparency and labeling as well, which is very important to know. I've been exposed to one other formula that was similar in the past, but I found out later on there's actually barely any PRMs actually in there. So this is one of those that if your clients are already using fish oil, it would be worth a 30-day challenge, even a one bottle challenge, let's say, to see how much different they feel with the pro-resolving mediator and omega-3 combination in this supplement. And this is amazing gut support because when our gut is compromised, gut inflammation plays a big, big role in recovery as well. People need to calm that down ASAP. And oftentimes, if you talk to somebody who does have Crohn's, colitis, or even IBS, which is what I was diagnosed with many years ago, generally when you would have a flare up, although it's not like an autoimmune flare up, it would last a few days to a week. You wouldn't feel yourself for a little while. So these things can definitely speed up recovery time as well. So they supply these omega-3 enzymatically derived precursors, and these actually ensure that if gut inflammation arises, either if it's from an infection, strenuous exercise, inflammatory foods, the body has the tools to resolve it quickly. Chronic inflammation erodes the gut barrier. So PRMs are known not only to quell inflammation, but also to promote tissue regeneration. They signal macrophages, which are very important for your immune system. They essentially eat up like inflammatory byproducts and things that are sitting around, old proteins that need to go as well. So they switch to this pro-resolving phenotype genetically, and they secrete growth factors. So they actually encourage epithelial cell proliferation. I know that's a mouthful, basically the regeneration of new lining at the end of the day, and they help with any gaps in your gut barrier. So these are absolutely powerful. So athletes or individuals that are using it, especially those with high inflammation from either training, poor diet, stress, they have that reflected in their gut. They generally don't feel well. They might have that badge of honor gas. They might have bloating. They might not feel good. So if they take PRMs, these systemic inflammatory markers like TNF alpha, interleukin 6, they can be reduced more quickly after inflammatory stimuli. And they've also been found to protect the intestine by promoting resolution of colonic inflammation as well. So it aids in the mucosal lining. So these can help. And this is what one of the things I really want to drive home, and it'll be on the last slide, is you're addressing gut health whether you think you are or you're not. So if you can educate your clients on, okay, you're taking this to get better gains in your training, but you're also doing this with your gut, they're going to have more skin in the game. They're going to be way more likely to keep up with the supplementation as well. But I'm so excited there's a PRM, and I know I've said it before, not to say that it's the make it or break it factor, but it's priced like very, very effectively and efficiently, I would say. It's something that's almost a steal for what you're getting in the formula. Then we have some of the basic support as well. So I know these are coming up, I think, in the end of May, if I recall correctly, the essential daily packs, which are going to have a multivitamin component to it. So as I showed you earlier, we need the building blocks, but that doesn't mean we don't need those tools. We still need those tools. So if your athletes aren't getting either good micronutrients through their diet, or maybe their gut's not right, you giving them a daily pack, easy compliance. This has magnesium in it, has vitamin D in it, it has the multivitamin in it as well. And then one of the big things is vitamin D3. And I could technically do a whole presentation on something so simple, adequate vitamin D levels and gut health. And it's so intertwined. It's actually a direct effect. If you have low vitamin D actually regulates how leaky your gut is. It regulates the bonds, the tight junctions that hold those gut cells together. So this is one of the reasons why you might notice it. And there's other reasons as well, but somebody might go on vacation and somewhere sunny, and all of a sudden they could eat whatever the hell they want. There's no symptoms. They come back and they try to eat those foods, and all of a sudden they're reacting in so many different ways. Well, that bolus sunlight dose that they're getting while they're away, oftentimes it's keeping the gut more intact, and you're going to be way more likely to absorb what you eat. And then the flip side is your vagus nerve is working better. Your nervous system is way more parasympathetic. It's kind of the best of all worlds. But you optimizing vitamin D, it really bothers me because it's such an easy thing to do, and people notice huge benefits from getting their vitamin D levels to an adequate amount. Ideally, you want to do this with sunlight. Vitamin D does not replace sunlight. Sunlight has so much more benefit. It impacts your circadian rhythm, which I think is the first thing everybody should work on in their health, literally, like circadian rhythm, which sleep ties to, and then work on everything else after that. But this is a great formula because it's got 2,000 IUs of D3, and then it has vitamin K1 and K2, which are very important in preventing excess vitamin D accumulation and plaquing, so calcium being pulled out of your bones and plaquing in arteries. But it also has immune system benefit. There's even some gut benefit to the vitamin K in here as well. So just really quick recap, B12 and zinc are two big ones that can be low with low stomach acid. So it's necessary to supplement while you're working on the root causes. This is a huge thing I learned in my career. Micronutrient deficiencies don't happen in isolation. So we kind of live in a world, especially if you're north of the border here, usually when you get blood work done, you'd be lucky to get a B12 and an iron. Those are really the only micronutrients that are tested for, maybe a calcium, maybe your electrolytes. But that one, and then if you're lucky, vitamin D3, you'll ask to get added on, or vitamin D, you'll ask to get added on there. But micronutrient deficiencies don't happen in isolation. So if somebody's low in iron, it doesn't mean they're only low in iron. The way they became low in iron is very similar to how they're going to be low in other minerals that are not readily quantified. So that's why taking a micronutrient formula, it covers your bases at the end of the day. It really helps you just make sure there's no loose parts to the ship, any holes in the ship, it plugs them up. So that's where a lot of people, they're not going to feel night and day different usually just taking a multi alone. But when you pair it with an overall plan, it could be the spark plug that activates everything else. And then, as I mentioned, vitamin D3 regulates intestinal permeability. Vitamin D3 deficiency increases likelihood of permeability and greater susceptibility to infections and inflammation. I don't know if you guys saw some of the evidence coming out during the pandemic, but even people who had really bad responses to the virus, they had low vitamin D scores. That was something that they saw across the board. So one of the best things you can do, especially here in Canada, where we get winter for like 5 months out of the year, depending on where you live, is get sunlight when you can, save your vacations for the winter, but supplement with vitamin D3 to just cover all of your bases. So it can create a significant change in the abundance of these big groups of bacteria called firmicutes, actinobacteria, and Bacteroidetes. Now, these are very important. These are kind of like macro categories of bacteria. So it's kind of like looking out an airplane window and seeing how much land and water there is. This basically in plain English translates to it has an effect on all of the positive stuff in your gut to a large extent. So one of the best things you can do with your clients is just ask them when's the last time you had vitamin D3 tested. Go get it tested. And they'll visit their doctor, and it's always shocking. I've seen people in the 20s, the 30s. It should be close to 120 to 150 ideally. And they're like rock bottom, like they've never seen sunlight before. And that is going to do so much. It just immediately lowers the ceiling on their potential. And then everything you're doing with them, you're bouncing off the ceiling and coming down. So especially when it comes to the gut, like that's such a low-hanging fruit. Please do it. Please look for vitamin D. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. So just some quick take-home points for everybody. And I have a free gift for everybody as well. Now more than ever before, you must be gut literate and gut aware. You're supporting the gut, you're supporting gut health even when you don't think you are. That's very, very important. So you can see these products. I'm sure many of you are already using them personally. You might be recommending them to your clients, but you probably didn't know how much you're helping them and what some explanations are for some of the outcomes they've been getting. You want to address absorption, and that can provide better performance and recovery. So we talked about enzymes and making sure the nervous system is right, but hydrochlorhydria, that's all important. Don't underestimate the role of foundational nutrient support. So we talked about amino acids, we talked about vitamin D, we talked about micronutrients. You always want to optimize macronutrients first. So I know many of you are doing it, but everything I talked about today, somebody could have the perfect supplementation routine, but if they're ingesting like 20 grams of protein a day, 30 grams of protein a day, and trying to like improve something, there's literally not enough building blocks. Sure, the amino acids will help, but you slowly want to work on macronutrients as well right off the bat. Don't be afraid to talk about poop with your clients. It's something that's you probably don't want to talk about at the dinner table, but you could talk about it behind closed doors. You could talk about it on the gym floor. You could talk about it in one-on-one consults as well. It's really important because people don't know this, right? I've had so many conversations with people where they're like, yeah, I go to the bathroom every day. My stool is completely normal. It floats every day. It's yellow. It's really greasy when I wipe. And you're like, you just told me you had normal digestion. Like, I thought that was normal, right? Or some people don't know that you should go every day. So I know there's people that go 3 to 4 times a week and they think that's completely normal. That's not normal. That's not great. So talk about poop with your clients and then pay attention to the warning signs. If people are telling you that their gas is smellier, don't just like laugh it off and say, hey, it's because you're drinking these protein shakes. Like, that's a sign that they're not digesting those protein shakes. So pay attention to any feedback that you get that the digestive system is not working right. And then in terms of a quick free gift for everyone, you could pull out your phone, you could take a screenshot here. This is a no strings attached gift. This is my 5 days to practice fulfillment program. It technically applies to every single background, no matter if you're somebody personally looking for more fulfillment out of what you do, or if you're a practitioner of any kind. It's 5 videos that you will receive. And in these videos, we cover a lot of key topics that we don't often talk about and some ways to impact your practice and how you grow. So I like to start with the person and not just start talking about business and all of that right off the bat. So you could get that. And then once you sign up, you'll also be enrolled in my Fulfilled Friday newsletter, which goes out every Friday. And I share 5 big takeaways from my week. And people have been giving me great feedback. It'll give you ideas for content to generate, things to talk about. So I've gotten a lot of great feedback there. And then if you want to follow me on social media, that's my Instagram handle. That's my Facebook as well. And I'd love to connect with each and every one of you.